Hello everyone, this is the second video in the module discussing the consumption savings problem of an individual. So we've talked in the first part about the environment. We are going to think about the person that lives for two periods, the current period or the present and the future. And this person is trying to decide how to allocate her consumption across time. So in the first module, we introduced the problem, we talked about the environment, and we defined what the lifetime budget constraint is, which connects the total amount a person consumes over her lifetime to the total amount of income after taxes that this person is going to have. And we discussed how we would plot that, and we talked about, depending on the decision of savings, whether we can think of a person as being a borrower or a lender. And just remember, a borrower was someone that was consuming more than her income in the first period, whereas a lender is someone that is consuming less than her income in the first period. So what I want to do now is to talk about the other piece of the decision problem of an agent, which is her preferences. So just to give you some idea about how this is going to work, let's go back for a second to the consumption leisure problem. So in that problem, remember, we would define the utility function over two goods that were consumption and leisure, and we talked about how these preferences look like for the space of possible consumption and leisure combinations. We want to do basically the same here. And an important point of departure that maybe is going to be slightly different as before is that we are going to think of consumption at different points in time as different goods. So we could think of consumption today as one type of good and consumption tomorrow as a different type of good. And what we are going to define is how does a person feel about consuming at different points in time. So we are going to specify preferences over streams of consumption over time. Okay? And the first assumption that we are going to make is that the utility over the lifetime consumption, which in this case is just C and C prime, consumption today and consumption in the future, is going to look as follows. It's going to be the sum of two little u functions, and the second period function is going to be multiplied by beta. And I'm going to talk about what this beta means in terms of economics. So UC is the utility that a person derives out of eating in the first period. U of C prime is the utility a person derives out of consuming in the second period instead. So there are two important properties of this function. The first one is that it is time autonomous, meaning that the U doesn't change over time. So the shape, for example, if we are thinking about this as being logarithmic, is going to be logarithmic today and is going to be logarithmic tomorrow. So we are not going to change the functional form over time. The second thing is that it's time separable. So as you can see, the marginal utility of U, which is just the derivative of U with respect to C, is not going to depend on C prime. So how much I consume today is going to be, or how much happier am I of consuming today, doesn't directly depend through preferences on my level of consumption in the future. And the same thing, consumption in the future doesn't depend on consumption in the present. Okay, now I said there is this other parameter, beta, and this is what we call the discount factor. So we are going to assume that beta is going to be a number between 0 and 1, and what beta is doing is that it's putting a different weight to consumption in the future relative to consumption today. So let's think of two examples. Let's say that beta is very close to 0. Then basically what this would say is that you mostly care about the present. You're a very impatient person. You don't care about the future at all. So of course, when we think about how you're going to choose between consuming today and consuming tomorrow, this beta is going to be very important, because if it's very close to 0, you will mostly want to consume today. Now a beta which is very close to 1 will be the opposite. It will basically mean that you care only about consuming in the future. So a beta close to 1 means that you don't care too much about consumption today, but you really put a lot of emphasis on consuming in the future. So what beta is doing is it's kind of weighting your preferences over consumption in your lifetime. If you think about today as being young and tomorrow as being old, a very small beta puts a lot of weight in consuming and enjoying life when you're young. A very high beta, on the other hand, puts a lot of weight on consuming and enjoying life on retirement. That's kind of another way to think about it. And as I said before, this is going to be called the discount factor. Now we are going to make some standard assumptions about preferences. These are going to be very similar to the ones we made in the consumption leisure module. We are going to assume that more is preferred to less. So the more consumption you get, whether today, tomorrow, the happier you're going to be. The second thing is that consumers are going to like diversity. So in general, they will not like to consume everything at once and nothing in the future. And the third one is that both C and C prime are normal goods, meaning that the more income you have, the more you will want to consume in terms of C or C prime. Now, in terms of a utility function, and if you don't remember where this comes from, you can go and review again the consumption leisure module where we discuss utility. So I'm going to go very fast now, but basically what these three things imply, these three things are giving us properties of our utility function. So the first one is giving us a property about the marginal utility, which is U prime of C, and it's just saying that this marginal utility is going to be non-negative. So more is preferred to less. If I give you a little bit more, you're going to be a little bit happier. The second one, it's kind of implying that let me just plot it here. Maybe this is going to be useful. So the first one just assumes that U is going to be an increasing function of C. The second one assumes that implies that we want to assume a concave function. And if you remember a concave function, so a function that looks like this or like this, a concave function is one that exhibits diminishing marginal utility. So basically, if you're today consuming very little, one more unit of consumption makes you extremely happy. If you're consuming a lot, one more unit of consumption is making you less and less happy. So this U prime being negative, it's telling you something about the slope of the utility function at different points of consumption. Closer to zero, the marginal utility is going to be very high. And as you increase C, the marginal utility is getting smaller and smaller. And it's related to the idea of satiation. Even though there's no full satiation, you get less and less happy as you are consuming already a lot of the good. Okay, and remember, U prime is just another way of denoting the marginal utility with respect to its argument. Okay, so the first assumption says that the function is increasing. The second assumption tells us that the function is going to be concave. Okay, and this is just in words. Our marginal utility from first and second periods is going to be positive. That's this property. The second property tells us that the agent has diminishing marginal utility from first and second period consumption. So given that you give weight to the extent that beta is strictly between 0 and 1 to both consumption in both periods of time, and given that your utility is concave, this is going to have implications about how you want to split your income between consumption at different points in time. And we are going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so some utility functions that satisfy this property. So the linear function actually, for the linear function, we want a non-strict concavity. So a linear function is weakly concave. So the marginal utility of the linear function is theta, and the second derivative is equal to 0. So this is a function that is going to be like a straight line with a slope of theta. The second one is log utility. Remember, the marginal utility of the log function is 1 over C, and which is U prime of C. The second derivative is the derivative of this function, which is minus C to the minus 2, which is something negative. A logarithmic utility is going to look something like this, where we have U here and C here. And finally, an isoelastic utility. So this is a generalization of the logarithmic utility. Basically, And sorry, okay, it should be 1 minus sigma here. An isoelastic utility is a generalization of the logarithmic utility, and it's allowing, so what this sigma is controlling is the degree of concavity of the function. So for example, if sigma is equal to 0, then this is basically a linear function. As you make sigma larger and larger, your function is going to be more and more concave. So what the sigma control is the degree of concavity. Closer to 0, linear, larger than 0 is going to be more and more concave. Okay? So our second step in terms of trying to figure out how an agent is choosing between combinations of consumption today and consumption in the future is to think about how we can represent these preferences over consumption. And one way in which we represented preferences when we were talking about consumption and leisure decisions was through the concept of indifference curve. So remember, indifference curve in that case were combinations of consumption and leisure that yielded the same level of utility. Now our two goods are not consumption and leisure, they are consumption today and consumption in the future. So we are going to think about indifference curves in a similar way, but adapted to our new environment. And these are going to be combinations of C and C prime that gives us some level of utility U bar 1. Now, because U has the same properties that they had before, the indifference curves are also going to look convex as before. And as if you don't remember, you can go back to the consumption leisure module when we talked about preferences. So I'm going a little bit fast here, but if you remember, one property of these curves, let's say we plot several of them, U2 bar, U3 bar, was that as you move away from the origin towards higher and higher values, your level of utility increases. So in other words, U bar 1 is the combinations of C and C prime that give us the lowest level of utility that we have plotted. U2 bar gives us intermediate levels, whereas U3 bar gives us the highest level. So a person will always try to reach the highest possible indifference curve it can. The only thing that is going to restrict this individual later on is the existence of a budget constraint. Now, why do higher levels of indifference curve mean that the individual is happier? Well, that comes from the more is better assumption. So if we, let me change the color here. If we are thinking about, for example, this level of consumption, let's call it C dot, here, if we keep consumption today at C naught and we increase consumption tomorrow to some, higher value, then it must be the individual is higher because it's getting more of one of the goods without having to sacrifice the other. So the fact that higher curves mean more happiness is a consequence of that assumption. Now, the concavity of this of the utility function, it's also going to have to do with the fact that indifference curves are convex, because the idea here is that let's take two extreme values, A and B. So if we ask the individual, we know that the individual is indifference between A and B. Now let's take a convex combination of those two values. We can see that the person is going to be happier by consuming any combination of those two values than by consuming any of those values individually. So clearly what a concave U means is that our indifference curves are going to be convex. And this is a direct result of the assumption that the individual likes diversity. So you never want too much of one good and too little of the other good. You would rather consume a lot of the two goods. Now, in terms of this dynamic economy, this has implications about the time path that individuals would want to choose. Because what it's saying is that a person would never want to consume everything when young and nothing at all, or vice versa. It would rather consume a little bit each period, and this will have to do with the idea of smoothing, and we'll discuss it later. Now, the other concept that I wanted to talk about, and we are going to discuss more in a minute, is that of marginal rate of substitution. So the marginal rate of substitution is how we call the slope of the indifference curve. And what the marginal rate of substitution is telling us is how much an individual, so let's say that we are at point A, where the individual consumes CA and CA prime, and we tell the individual, okay, imagine that we give you epsilon more, so CA plus epsilon, how much would you be willing to give up of tomorrow's consumption in order to consume epsilon more units today? And that's precisely the idea of the tangent of the indifference curve, or the slope of the indifference curve. Again, it's telling us how much you're willing to trade off, not consumption versus leisure as in our previous module, but how much you're willing to trade off consumption today versus consumption tomorrow. So this is just summarizing what I said. If the utility function is concave, the indifference curve is going to be convex. This is always going to be a property in all the utility functions that we are discussing here in intermediate macro. And the second thing that these assumptions imply is that a person would want to have smooth consumption. So if we think about consumption over time, rather than consumption today, consumption tomorrow, a person would like a constant stream of consumption, so eat the same at every period, than a very volatile stream of consumption. That's what this preference is going to tell us. And this will have implication about how much an individual is willing to borrow or save, because depending on how her income is, the fact that she wants to smooth her consumption will affect her investment and savings and borrowing decisions. So this assumption is going to have a nice, important interpretation when we think about consumption at different points in time. So I want to go back for a second to the concept of marginal rate of substitution in order to understand how it relates to marginal utility and why it's the slope of the indifference curve. So let me go to our two-dimensional plot, which has C and C prime, and let's think of an allocation, some point A, which has consumption C0 today and C0 prime tomorrow. And let's assume that this person decides to consume a little bit less, or that we take out some consumption, DC, and let's call that this change in consumption to be epsilon. So we cut down the consumption of the individual from C0 to C0 minus epsilon. Now, if the individual is going to be indifferent, it must be that if we cut down consumption by epsilon today, it must be that we are increasing consumption of Z prime tomorrow by some amount. What is that amount? Well, that's going to be determined by the marginal rate of substitution, which is again telling us if I take out some amount DC, if I cut down your consumption, you are going to be less happy. So the marginal utility of consumption is going to go down. So what must happen in order for you to be indifferent? Well, it must be that I'm giving you something tomorrow that is making you happy in some other way, which is the marginal utility of consumption tomorrow. So again, the loss of, or the welfare loss today must be equal to the welfare gain tomorrow in order for you to be in the same utility function. When that thing happens, it means that you are in the same indifference curve. The rate at which this happens, if we make epsilon very, very small, we approach this to a derivative. So this is just a little bit nicer. Ignore there shouldn't be a minus here. So the utility loss of cutting down consumption by epsilon must be equal to the utility gain that you got because we increase consumption in the future. Now, if we rearrange terms, so we want to write how much does consumption tomorrow need to increase in order for consumption, when consumption today decreases, in order for you to be indifferent, it must be in this proportion. So we can solve from here dc prime divided by dc. So we can divide the two terms. And we can divide also both sides. Remember, this thing here is the marginal utility of C prime. This thing here is the marginal utility of C. So we can rearrange it as we have before. So what is the change in C prime that you need to compensate you for a reduction of epsilon in Z in order for you to keep at the same utility level is equal to the ratio of marginal utilities. Again, this is mu of C and this is mu of C prime. Now remember that our utility function is little uc plus beta uc prime. Sorry, uc prime. So what is the marginal utility of consumption with respect to C is just u prime of C. What is the marginal utility of consumption with respect to C prime is beta uc prime. Is the change in the total utility when we change C prime. So we can also write the slope of the indifference curve equal to this ratio. And this is going to be our marginal rate of substitution between C and C prime. So what is this marginal rate of substitution telling us? It's telling us how much a person is willing to move consumption across periods. Okay? And graphically, the marginal rate of substitution, or minus the marginal rate of substitution, is the slope of the indifference curve. Because if you cut down consumption by epsilon, it tells us how much you need to increase C prime in order to stay in the same indifference curve I1.